8 a.m. It's said that the average person will walk past 36 murderers in their lifetime. 36 people who have taken the final breaths of victims who led a typical, everyday life like mine. The scariest part is, they can look like you, or me. Amongst a large crowd of people, they go undetected, camouflaged like a predator until the perfect opportunity comes to strike. These opportunities can be at any given moment, at any given day. That's what makes them so terrifying. These were the thoughts I was having while I was reading a news article yesterday in a cafe downtown. With every word my eyes passed over, the more my heart sank. Jessica Talbot, 35, soon to be married, dead in her home after being stabbed 27 times in the chest and abdomen. Truly despicable. The intruder snuck into the house in the middle of the night yesterday and murdered a soon-to-be married woman in cold blood. Police said there were no leads at this time, but they were doing everything they can to find her killer. Yeah, right, I scoffed. They never do anything until it's too late. Call me cynical, but the cries of help from Minnie either go unanswered or brushed aside. Her fiancé Christian, in addition to family and friends, claimed that Jessica had reported numerous times a stalking behavior and harassment from an unknown number, yet nothing was ever uncovered. The sentence confirmed my earlier sentiment, making my heart heavy for the numerous people who tried to do something. Why is it so hard to just listen? Listen to these people and do the right thing. My eyes drifted to the picture beneath the article. It revealed an absolutely beautiful woman with straight blonde hair. Her smile was infectious, and her emerald green eyes twinkled with a bright happiness. This woman would never see her wedding day. I couldn't begin to imagine what everyone close to her was feeling. I shook my head in disgust as I reached out in front of me to take a sip of my iced coffee. Its refreshing taste taking the bitterness of the bile that formed in my throat. Murder, rape, pedophiles, robberies. It's always the worst of humanity that makes the front pages. The good things in life don't rile people up or make anybody any money. I decided to take a mental break and put my phone away in my pocket, shoving the negative thoughts that clouded my mind to the side. My mind had been so overwhelmed. I had completely drowned out what was going on around me. The cafe was filled with people sitting, moving around, or shuffling in through the door. Lo-fi music played over the speakers that was loud enough to hear, but not loud enough to drown out everything else. The chatter, the clacking of keyboards, the barista taking orders. It would be considered sensory overload to some, but to me, it was comforting. I liked being in public and seeing the daily interactions that comprised of people's days. Maybe it's because my life isn't that special, so I can live vicariously through others. Maybe it's because I'm a little weird. I'm not sure, but either way, I just like to people watch. Ironically enough, though, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. If you're in public long enough, you will get that feeling eventually. However, something was different about this. It felt like someone's eyes were glued to me and dissecting me like I were a science class frog. My eyes darted around the cafe as I wondered what was making me feel so uneasy. I saw nothing but couples chatting, people on business, talking on their phones or working on their laptops. But there was one person my eyes stumbled on that was different. He was sitting in the corner, his beady little eyes fixated directly on me. My gut pinpointed that this was the guy responsible for making me feel this way. The man's eyes were a shark's, dark, devoid of any emotion, and were seemingly watching my every movement as his hands hovered over the keys to his laptop. A part of me wanted to go over and confront him and tell him to knock it off. But what if he wasn't looking at me? What if he was looking through me? He seemed to be pondering something, but what I didn't have the faintest idea, nor did I want to really know. We locked eyes for a moment that felt like an eternity before he returned to whatever it was that was on his laptop, his eyes now hidden behind the computer screen, and his curly red hair. I chalked it up to the man being lost in thought, and I just so happened to be in his line of sight. It's happened to me before, so I couldn't necessarily fault him for that. Yet, I couldn't completely shrug off the feeling that something was seriously off about him. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and decided to do some more reading. I had to leave in an hour, but thankfully, I was only right down the street from where I was employed. In other words, I had quite a bit of time on my hands to kill. I'm not sure how much time had passed before I felt that unnerving gaze fall upon me again. Out of my peripheral, I could see the figure of the man peeking out from his computer screen at me. I didn't want to give the man the satisfaction of knowing how uncomfortable I was sitting there. I felt like a deer caught in the scope of a hunter's rifle. Any sudden movement and I was done for. I gulped nervously and reached out to grip the iced coffee on the table. The condensation dripped down my hand, the cup sweating like I was internally. Try to act normal. I kept repeating in my head like a mantra as I hyperfixated on the illuminated screen of my phone. Eventually he withdrew and went back to his laptop, his eyes once again hidden from view. I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't feel like I was being suffocated by a boa constrictor. This might have been how Perseus felt when he was avoiding the eyes of Medusa. I joked darkly to myself, still processing the weird scenario I was in. Perhaps I was overreacting, but there was something off, something I couldn't quite exactly put my finger on. My focus on my phone never left until it was eventually time to leave. I got up to throw my empty cup away and pushed my seat in when I noticed something strange. Amidst the constant traffic of people coming and leaving the cafe, I noticed the man who was staring at me was no longer here. However, his laptop was. It was closed and looked as though it had remained undisturbed for a while. How it didn't get snatched up, I'm not sure, but I assumed its owner would return for it soon. Perhaps the man had gone to the bathroom. No, that couldn't be possible. My seat was mere feet from the bathroom. I would have noticed if he walked right past me, especially with those eyes that he had. Maybe he had stepped outside for a smoke. I looked outside and gazed upon the people who walked the sidewalk. His face was not amongst them. Had he really just up and left his laptop here? My heart thudded like a heavy drum as I walked towards where the man had sat earlier and grabbed the laptop. It was cold, like it had been off for an extended period of time. Maybe it hadn't even been turned on. Did he come in here just to watch people? To watch me? I'm not someone who was easily scared, but this was definitely freaking me out. I began walking towards the front counter to ask if the people working could return the laptop to the man, but stopped. There are so many people who walk through those doors. How are they going to remember some random guy? Maybe I could take it and return it when I come back here the next day. I scolded myself for entertaining the idea of taking someone's personal property. That was downright wrong. What more could I do, though? Besides, it wasn't stealing. It was making sure it was safe to be returned. I debated for a while on what to do, but that's when I went with my gut and decided to take the laptop. I would return to the cafe tomorrow morning and return it to the man if he was here. With my decision having been made, I walked out the door, laptop in hand, towards my job. Hopefully the mind-numbing bedroom could make me feel something other than fear. 6 p.m. By the time I got home from work, I was mentally exhausted. The monotony of work had nearly bored me to death. The only keeping me awake was the mystery of what the laptop I had taken contained. I had debated all day on whether or not I should look into the laptop's contents, and I had decided that I would. It's not an invasion of privacy if I'm looking for the person who left their property behind. That's the thought I used to rationalize what I was going to do tonight. I had placed the laptop on the desk in my room and made myself something to eat. When I returned, I opened the laptop and pressed the power button. I munched on my food as I anxiously anticipated the computer turning on. What was I going to find on there? Everyone has skeletons in their closet, but what kind of skeletons lurked on the laptop? After several moments of waiting, the screen lit up before me with just a basic wallpaper of large sunflowers. I clicked on the pad and was immediately allowed access to the home screen. The fact there wasn't a passcode screen was very strange to me. Who doesn't lock their computer? Everyone these days has a lock on their devices. Even weirder was the fact that despite all the searching I did by going through various files, downloads, or documents, I wasn't able to find a thing in regard to the person's identity. It was like the computer was wiped clean. Why would that be, though? I continued to search around, clicking on anything and everything that could potentially give me insight on the man who was observing me in the cafe. I was so wrapped up in my investigation and bewilderment that I was startled when I heard a knock at my door. Who could be at my door? I got up and walked to my front door and opened it. Nothing. No one was there. I looked to the left and to the right, but there was not a single person in sight. Maybe I was mishearing things. It might have been coming from the neighbor's apartment. It could have been someone who realized they had the wrong house. Who knows? I closed the door and brushed it off as I walked back towards my room and sat myself before the laptop once more. I began to painstakingly comb through the files in the hopes of finding anything. Just as I was about to chalk this whole thing up as a massive waste of time due to my fruitless results, I stumbled across a single Word document that was titled August 5th, 2024. Is this a journal entry? I began reading, and what I found made my blood run ice cold. 7:45 p.m. She's in the kitchen cooking dinner. I couldn't smell what it was exactly, but I knew it had to be intoxicating. It couldn't nearly be as intoxicating as her. Ever since I saw her face a couple weeks ago, I couldn't get her out of my head. She was the woman for me. She was mine. She just didn't know it. Tonight I was going to show her she was mine. What the hell was this? I continued reading. 11:20 p.m. I snuck in through the window in her bathroom. I know she keeps it unlocked. I've used it to get inside and snatch some collectibles if you catch my drift. Tonight, though, I was going for the ultimate trophy. Her. Jessica. I was going to confess my love for her. Jessica. Why did that name sound so familiar? Her husband was out of town on business, so I had her all to myself. I crawled in and made my way through the darkness to her. She lay in bed so beautiful, so still. I caressed her hair and longed for that smile to be mine. The guy that she was in love with was not who she needed to be with. She needed me, someone who was obsessed with her and would treat her right. I would have treated her right had she not woken up and screamed at me and called me all these nasty names. I thought the world of her, but she didn't think of me as nothing other than a creep. That's why I stabbed her, over and over and over again. I loved her, but I wasn't going to be disrespected. The only way we can be close now is when our spirits meet again. See you again someday, Jessica. I felt shivers up my spine as I finished reading. It was last updated at 8:46 a.m. this morning, around the time that I noticed the man had disappeared. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath, trying to calm my frantically beating heart. I had realized why this all seemed so familiar. Jessica, the stabbings. It all made sense. It was the murder I had read about this morning on the news. It was written from the perspective of the killer. The man in the cafe who was watching me was the same man that killed Jessica Talbot. My head spun as the pieces of the puzzle had been put together. Surely there was an explanation for this. But what? Maybe the person was just writing a story in the perspective of the killer. That would explain it. Might be a little tasteless, but it's still an explanation nonetheless. The names and the details of the crime, though, that would have to be one hell of an eerie coincidence. I berated myself for having this desire to go looking for this person as I had stumbled upon something truly unsettling. I slammed the laptop shut, turned off the lights, and got into bed. I continued to try and rationalize what I read and comfort my anxious brain as I tossed and turned in bed, hoping to fall asleep sooner rather than later. No matter what I did, I couldn't really keep those awful realizations out of my head. I had taken a laptop that had belonged to a killer. I had evidence that I couldn't go to anyone with. It would be self-incriminating. Everyone would either not believe me or think that I did it. Was the whole thing a trap? Was this all a ploy to set me up and make me look like I did this? The paranoid thoughts ran rampant in my head like a bull in a china shop until somehow my body became numb to my thoughts. I eventually felt my eyelids grow heavy with an incredible weight and close, fear subsiding long enough for me to fall asleep into a much-needed slumber. 6 a.m. I woke up the next morning in excruciating pain. I cried out as it felt like my ribs were stabbing my organs. My body felt like it were on fire, and my mouth had the taste of iron like I had been choking on my own blood. I tried to move, but it felt so sluggish and broken. Every movement felt like I was stuck in slow motion. How did I get these injuries? Did I get into some kind of fight or something? I searched deep into the pitch black well of my thoughts, hoping that I could recover a memory that would offer any sort of explanation. Unfortunately for me, my mind went blank. I didn't remember anything other than I had gone to bed. I frantically recapped the previous night's events over and over, desperately hoping that something would stand out. Every time I remembered closing my eyes, though, it was nothing but darkness. What was happening to me? Why couldn't I remember anything? I struggled to sit up, but I managed to fight through the pain and look down at the foot of my bed. That's where I noticed the laptop resting on top of my feet. It definitely wasn't there when I went to bed last night. How the hell did it get there? Before I could even begin to dwell on how the laptop could have gotten there, I heard the familiar sound of my phone vibrating. Was someone calling me? I checked the phone and saw that it was a number I didn't recognize. Maybe it had answers. I answered the phone. Who is this? What's going on? I heard nothing but the sound of heavy breathing. It sounded like someone who had just finished running a marathon. Hello? Is anybody there? The heavy panting continued before a voice finally spoke up. I know who you are. The line went dead. I put my phone down and felt the blood drain from my face. Who was that? What was this all about? My phone buzzed and I saw the notification that the number that had just called me sent 12 picture messages. The sound of my heart pounding was deafening as I opened my phone and gazed upon the pictures. I recoiled in horror as they were all of a man with his arms and legs duct taped to a chair in a dark room. His eyes were wide in horror in the first picture as he stared directly at the camera, almost as if he were staring directly at me. The next picture saw him hunched over in pain, his mouth open as he screamed in agony from the pain that was inflicted to him. The third picture showed his mouth was duct taped shut. Bloodstains soaked his shirt and covered his face. The abuse had escalated, and by the looks of the other photos, it would only continue to do so. The rest of the photos showed various displays of violence acted out on the man who was completely restrained and had nowhere to run. Acts of violence I can't even begin to describe, nor would I want to. It was truly the definitions of repulsive, abhorrent, and deplorable. It was like a car crash. I just couldn't look away. I found myself morbidly transfixed on the photos, studying them for anything that could provide any leads on who took them. That's when I grabbed the laptop and opened it. The documents I had looked at yesterday was still there, but there was a new one that had been created. August 6th, 2024. Yesterday's date. My heart plummeted. I read through the document and made a horrific realization. The knock at my door last night, my injuries, the phone call, the pictures, this new document, they were all connected. It all made sense. He had found me. I was the man in the pictures. The guy from the cafe had found where I lived and had taken me. I was going to be his next victim if I didn't leave this alone. That is why I'm typing this all out. I need to know what to do. What can I do? Who can I talk to? I'm so scared.